On tonight's episode of Mr. Norris, in case you missed it, we look at the Battle of Saratoga. How was it won by the Continental Forces, and why did it become the turning point of the American Revolution? Hey, hello, hi, and what is up, everybody? It's your host, Mr. Norris, the history teacher with the good hair. And today we're going to be talking about the Battle of Saratoga, crucial turning point when it comes to the American Revolution. Absolutely fascinating stuff. All right, let's get into it. When we last left off, my last video, we discussed the Battle of Trenton and Washington's 10 crucial days that essentially saved the Revolution, right? Late in the year of 1776, they have the victory at the Battle of Trenton. And then a few days later, Washington crosses the Delaware again and has a second victory at Trenton again, then a victory at Princeton. And then he decides to spend the winter of 1777 in Morristown, New Jersey, up in the hills of New Jersey. And it's there that he kind of starts to reassess the first year of the war, how things have gone. And he actually decides to make a few changes to his strategies. It hits him there at that winter in Morristown that he can't fight Great Britain in wide open battlefields in conventional ways that they're used to fighting. If they do that with his group of, ragamuffin farmers, they stand absolutely no chance against Great Britain, who is the greatest army in the world. They need to adapt a strategy that Washington has seen the Native Americans use during the French and Indian War, and that is guerrilla warfare. Now, what is guerrilla warfare? No, that does not mean that you grab the most attractive blonde nearby and climb a skyscraper. Not guerrilla warfare, right? R.I.P. Harambe, gone too soon. Guerrilla warfare is when you use fast, sudden sneak attacks and the land to mask these fast, sudden sneak attacks on your enemy. Basically, you use trees, the geography to camouflage yourselves and then attack your enemy when they least expect it. And this makes a lot of sense when you think about the American Revolution, as the British soldiers typically wore bright red uniforms and they're, traveling in the woods, and the Continental Army is kind of wearing just a mishmash. Sometimes the standard issued Continental Army uniform, but most of the time just their own clothes. So Washington decides, as much as I possibly can going forward in this war, I want to avoid fighting large scale battles against the British and kind of stick to hit and run tactics. Basically, guys, do what Americans do best. Be kind of annoying, right? Irritate the British. Make them chase us, and then we'll do fast little attacks on our own terms when we know that we can retreat and be safe. And that's what they're going to try to do as best they can going forward. Now, the campaign of 1777, for much of the year, there isn't much fighting. It's a lot of strategizing. The British are also re-strategizing on their own side. They decide that their strategy going into 1777 is to link up a lot of their forces in the colonies and basically seal off the entire Northeast, or all of the New England colonies. They believe that that's the main focus area where all the problems and issues are inside of the colonies and with the Patriot cause. So if they can squash New England, they can essentially win the war. And what they decide to do is take General William Howe's forces, which are located basically around the New Jersey, New York area, march them up north, and meet up with General John Burgoyne's forces, who are going to be marching from Canada. And once they meet, essentially seal off the Northeast, they're also expecting a general named St. Leger to meet them there as well. And with those three combined forces, literally march on and crush the New England colonies, if you will. That's the plan. And this starts getting carried out pretty much mid to late 1777 by these three generals or commanders. And pretty much from the get-go, the plan starts to go wrong. First part of the plan that goes wrong is William Howe totally disobeys orders. He's told to march north and meet and link up with General John Burgoyne, but instead he decides to march on Philadelphia and try to take Philadelphia, which in those times was pretty much the capital of the colonies, as that's where the Second Continental Congress was meeting. So totally disobeys orders, and he gets a hankering for some cheesesteaks and wants to march on Philadelphia. He wants to settle the debate, Geno's or Pat's. It's an age-old question. Personally, just take a look at me. I'll eat both of them. I don't care. However, get that Cheese Whiz stuff off of my Philly cheesesteaks. I don't want cheese from a can. Bring me some mozzarella, bring me some provolone, and then we can talk. Okay, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, William Howe decides to march on Philadelphia. And George Washington decides to put up an ill-fated defense of Philadelphia at battles like Brandywine, where he's trying to save the city. And, if nothing else, at least stall so that Congress can get out of there in time, which they do. But Philadelphia does get taken by William Howe, and that's going to mean some really bad stuff for Washington and his men, which we'll talk about going forward. But that's the first part of the plan that goes awry. William Howe totally disobeys what he's supposed to be doing, which is a big no-no when you're supposed to be following chain of command in war. Now, the next part of the plan that goes awry is John Burgoyne's march from Canada is a 6-week disaster. Now, John Burgoyne's nickname was Gentleman Johnny. He was a refined English gentleman. And his troops were marching down from Canada and moving very slowly. There's a little over 7,000 of them. They're traveling with furniture, with his personal belongings, with their wives, and they are just creeping along. It's like a moving city. And John Burgoyne is taking his sweet time. Also, they don't really know the route down from Canada, and they're kind of, fumbling, stumbling across the wilderness of the colonies. To add on to that, colonial militias in those areas are taking Washington's decree of guerrilla warfare to heart, and they are using it beautifully on John Burgoyne's march. People like Daniel Morgan and some of his militiamen, not only are they doing these sudden, quick, fast, surprise, hit-and-run guerrilla warfare attacks, but they're also, doing things like cutting down trees and putting them in the way of their route and basically blocking John Burgoyne at every single pass that you could possibly imagine, making this trip as difficult as humanly possible. Another thing that Daniel Morgan and some of these colonial militiamen decide that they're going to do I apologize, my dog Chance just clearly doesn't appreciate history as much as I do. For shame, Chance. Go to your room. Okay, he's ignoring me. Anyway, where was I? Another strategy that the Continental Army and these colonial militias are employing is to target officers going into battle. Now, back then, and even still today, that's kind of a big no-no. And by officers, we mean, sergeants, colonels, first sergeants, lieutenants, right? And the whole thought process was if you shoot them first and eliminate them first, then you create mass chaos. And the British troops really don't know who to listen to or whose directions to follow. It's said that at one point during the Battle of Saratoga, or the Saratoga campaign, that in one British company, 10 of their 11 officers were killed by colonial militiamen and guerrilla warfare, which is ridiculous. So the term playing a little dirty, are the Americans playing dirty? Yes, they are, definitely. But you know what the saying goes, all's fair in love and war, and love is a battlefield, right? We are young, dun, 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 heartache to heartache. Okay, I'll stop. I know that not one child knows what I'm talking about at all. Okay, but yeah, so hit and run tactics all along Gentleman Johnny's route down from Canada, slowly wearing away at his men and his supplies, and basically just frustrating him to no end. And eventually gets to the point where Johnny is so overwhelmed. And remember, he's got no backup now. The other two units that were supposed to meet up with him, St. Leger and William Howe, they don't make it. And at right around Saratoga, New York, Gentleman Johnny is surrounded, or he becomes surrounded by forces led by Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold. Yes, Benedict Arnold. He has not switched sides yet. Eventually, October 7th, 1777, Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne sees no other option but to surrender to the American forces, and he surrenders over 6,000 men and supplies to the Continental Army. This is a tremendous victory for their cause. It is and becomes the turning point of the American Revolution. Why is it the turning point? Well, at the same time, we were really trying to get France fully involved in this conflict. They were helping us by sending over guns and ammunition and money and baguettes, but we were hoping that they would actually join and fight and send their navy and their forces. Now, France didn't want to take that big of a risk on the Continental Army and the colonial militias if they don't think that they have a chance of winning. Saratoga was a convincing enough victory that France takes a second look and says, wait a second, these guys might actually have a shot. We're in. We are in the war and we're on the American side. That is why it's the turning point, folks. If France doesn't join the war and help us out, we don't win the American Revolution. So this is absolutely crucial and needed. Washington, just to check in with him, he loses Philadelphia to William Howe. And after this, he's going to kind of spend a miserable winter at Valley Forge, which I'll discuss in an upcoming video. But there you have it. Saratoga is a crucial victory, turning point of the war, because it convinces the French that they should join on the American side. If you like the video, please like, comment, or subscribe. Any of that would be just fine. Remember that history is life. And in the words of George Washington, the surest basis for public happiness is knowledge. So go out there and get some. Have a good night, everybody.